Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/Pro Revenge. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Play illegal games, win legal prizes. This happened about a decade. I worked for a large drug chain as a frontline manager. For this chain, the pharmacist is the owner of the shop. They run it, but the company still owns the whole thing. I guess it's like they're a corporate franchisee. Anyway, this shop had a history of not being able to keep a manager in the role I just took on for very long. The training was practically non-existent and nothing was documented. On with the show. One day within my first 3 months, I'm as sick as a dog and can barely get out of bed. As it's a health and wellness business and I couldn't even work if I wanted to, I called into the back of the house manager. This manager acts as the assistant manager to the owner, as they were real-life friends. I said I was sick and couldn't be into work. I was asked who would be covering for me, as I had to open the shop every day. I said I didn't know. I was told that as a manager, I was responsible for this and needed to find someone. Fair enough. Even though nobody told me about this, I pulled out my staff listing and found someone to cover my shift who had keys and could open the store. Keep in mind, most of my staff were part-time students at the time, and I only had one full-time employee that worked Monday through Friday. When I got into work the next day, the assistant manager told me that I couldn't call in sick and that the next time I called in sick, I shouldn't bother coming back. I was shocked, as this is very unprofessional, and I didn't expect it coming from the second-in-command at the store. My one full-time employee starts telling me that I'm the best manager they've had there in the last 2 years, and during that time they went through 6 managers before me. I'm told that I've done more in my time there than all the previous managers did in total. Things like having the staff cash out on company time, not making people stay to find errors or recount on their own time, basically not breaking labor laws, LOL. So the owner calls me into their office and tells me that due to my sick day, I won't be paid for it as I'm still on probation, and that the accountant who does the payroll will be instructed as such. This was unexpected as I'm a salaried employee, and probation or not, I know this isn't right, but I agree and get on with my day. Being that there were lots of part-time/students that worked there, we had an actual punch clock to clock in and clock out for all employees, including me. Being a salaried employee, whenever one of my staff couldn't work, and if I couldn't find a replacement, I ended up covering the shift myself. I looked at it like an opportunity to get to know my evening staff better, as I usually never saw them. On the paycheck that my sick day happened, I also needed to cover a few extra shifts for other employees, as everyone seems to get sick at about the same time, and as the manager, I'm the one who totals up the time cards prior to giving them over to the accountant. These time cards can't be faked, as they are physically punched and encoded with dates and times from the machine. I handed my team's time cards with mine on top to the accountant, who looks at me and reminds me about the instructions she's gotten from the owner. She didn't like it, but she had her orders. I tell her that I understand, and here's my time card. She looks at it, raises her eyebrows at me, and before she can ask a question, I remind her that I'm not a salaried employee as I'm still on probation, and that normal pay rules should apply, even though this is illegal. She looks at me, smiles, and confirms that was what she was told by the owner. It turns out that deducting the sick day I missed, but adding the 3 extra shifts I had to work that period to cover for other staff not showing up, I ended up working 96 hours that payday. So because I wasn't salaried, the accountant paid me time and a half for the extra 16 hours I worked. Also, here's revenge for you. Because I knew that these things weren't really legal, I decided I was done with this company and this boss. I emailed my friend who helped me get the job, who just happened to be the head of their corporate security with the story I just told, and gave him permission to send it to whoever he thinks would need to see it. Later that week, I get a call from another employer asking if I could start immediately. I said yes, of course, and went back into work. This call happened just after I'd gotten home from work, yes, before cell phones were a thing. I walked into work, went into the back office to collect my personal effects, and came back out. My shift supervisor was perplexed as I just left for the night. I shook his hand and told him that it was nice working with him. He was shocked and asked, "You're firing me?" I actually LOL'd at that and told him, "No, I'm quitting. You get to keep working here." I went to hand in my keys and resignation to the night pharmacist and told them to pass it on to the owner. My letter consisted of, "I quit," signed OP. I went back a few weeks later to get some stuff. I still shop there as it's close to my home, and the one full-time employee says hi with a big smile and tells me the following in hushed tones. "A few days later, after you left, some suits from the head office came in and had a meeting with the owner and left. And when the owner left after that day, they haven't seen the owner since. Seems the suits came in and took the store away from them based on the owner's inability to keep your old position filled." The employee didn't know about the email I sent to the head of security, but when I mentioned it, the employee lit up like a light bulb and said, "So that's why." The icing on the cake for me was that the owner knew about this connection I had with the head of security, as they were listed as a reference, and the owner contacted them directly about the referral. Doing illegal stuff to someone with a direct line to the head of security is probably not a good idea. And our next story. Make me wait for money? I'll just take my engine back. First off, this was not me, and second, this was some time ago. My grandfather had been retired for a bit after getting hurt on the job at the railroad. Being a little bored at the time, he offered a local indie VW shop owner his time to run for parts and other errands in exchange for some help on his VW. So my grandfather returns to the shop in the afternoon one day to find the owner of the shop mingling and acting pretty PO'd, and I ask him what was up. The story went that Jay had just rebuilt and installed an engine for a customer, and when the guy picked up the car in the AM, it paid with a check. This was not uncommon at the time, being circa 1980. When Jay went to cash the check at lunch, the bank informed him that payment on the check had been stopped. He asked them when, as he just received it a few hours ago. They told him just about this morning. So apparently the owner of the car paid the bill, went to the bank, and immediately canceled the check. I called the guy on the phone and asked him what the hell happened, why the check was canceled. The guy said, "You made me wait for my car, so I'm going to make you wait for your money." What had happened was one of the parts for the engine had been delayed for a few days, and Jay couldn't finish the job when initially promised, but as soon as the part came in, he put the engine back together and got the guy his car back. Needless to say, I was PO'd. It's Friday, and he wanted to wrap things up a little early, and getting paid for an engine rebuild was a nice wrap to the week. Now the revenge. I asked my grandfather to come with him. He grabbed a few tools, and he hopped in his little pickup, a VW of course, and off they went. Jay drove over to the guy's house, knowing where he lived, and him being a customer and having the address on the canceled check, pulled up the guy's house and proceeded to remove the engine from the car in about 10 minutes. While this might seem unbelievable, if you've ever worked on an old air-cooled VW, they're literally held in by 4 bolts, a couple of screws, and a few wires, and a good mechanic could have one out in no time at all. After it was removed, my grandfather helped him put the engine in the back of the truck. While a little bulky, a complete VW engine is not that heavy. Now the revenge. After they had the motor loaded up, Jay wrote a note and left it under the wiper. "When you decide to pay me, just add the extra dollars to pay for the removal and replacement of the engine and for the time it took me to come over here and get it. A-hole." And they drove off. This is added later as I seem to be leaving a good ending out. This little bit is a more thirdish or fourthish hand. The guy obviously called back and was livid when his new engine wouldn't start. It may not have been obvious when he walked to the car that it wasn't sitting right. They sit a little high without the extra weight. He ended up calling Jay and was promptly reamed by Jay about the whole thing and told if he wanted the engine back, he needed to pay the extra time, and most likely in cash. I'm making an assumption on how the actual events unfolded, as it was almost 40 years ago. But Jay could be a D as well. And our last story. Follow your financial advice? Sure, boss. I got a management job at a small business by accident about 2 years ago. Someone got fired, the replacement bailed, and the job landed in my lap. Since then, my responsibilities have been increasing monthly while my pay has stayed stagnant at just a bit higher than minimum wage. There are over a dozen responsibilities on my plate that only I can do for us at this point. Even the business owner calls me for help if I take a day off. They need me very much here. Where I live, management jobs are generally about 1.8 times minimum wage to start. I make about 1.4 times minimum wage. I've been budgeting, reviewing my finances, and budgeting some more, trying to pay down debt so I can comfortably afford to have kids and maybe a house in about 4 years' time. Despite my best efforts at my current pay, it'll take me 6 years to reach this goal. I approached my boss about a raise several weeks ago. He delayed the discussion multiple times, finally giving in and giving all senior employees a 6% raise and implementing a bonus structure for meeting sales targets. Of those employees, I'm the only one whose work directly impacts the sales targets. The fixed raise was under $1 per hour, and the bonus scheme, if I worked my butt off more than ever before, would work out to another $1 per hour on months the targets reached. This total still has me under the pay rate for general management in my area and doesn't account for all the responsibilities I have that only I'm trained to do. I told my boss I was unhappy with this, and he gave me a book on financial management, told me to follow its advice and stop buying coffees. Chapter 1 of the book recommended you audit yourself financially and said if you've budgeted well, trimmed extra expenses, and still couldn't reach your financial goals with your current income, seek a better job. So I'm following my boss's sound financial advice and looking for a new job. Got a new job. Not exactly the position I want, but I sure hope they call my reference my current boss. Hey guys, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.